Welcome to the future of climate coverage. Well, the journalists are the activists. What? You mean we're not already there? You mean we haven't been having them just shove their activism in our faces constantly already? What? Covering climate now sells top journalists on plan to transform media in response to a climate emergency. They still haven't figured out that this is why they're losing customers. This is why they're losing money. They take over trusted platforms, then abuse those platforms to push their agenda, and then are shocked when no one trusts those platforms anymore. In late September, with hundreds of journalists watching, covering climate now, co-founders Mark Hertzgaard began a 2-day media conference with a call to arms. Climate change, he told attendees at Columbia Journalism School, isn't just a problem or crisis, it's an emergency, one that requires breathless, around-the-clock coverage. Think Corona-chan, Hertzgaard explained, or said, except that it's the planet that's sick. Now, yeah, you know what? It is an emergency, but not for us. You know who this is an emergency for? All of those corporations and governments that invested trillions of dollars into the green scam. That invested trillions of dollars, just threw that money away for the future carbon credit trading system that's never going to come to pass. This must become an emergency or all that money is gone. That's the problem. That's the emergency. We know how to cover emergencies. We cover them a lot. You know how to create spin, yes. We saw that during Corona-chan, right? Or it's going to say in the session titled "The State of Climate Journalism," issuing a call to action. And what do you think the public, how have they been responding to your coverage of COVID? It's an interesting comparison. During COVID, the press, at the direction of various quote-unquote experts, ruthlessly politicized its own coverage. The possibility that the virus leaked from a lab, now considered the most likely scenario for its emergence, was roundly derided as a conspiracy theory. Yeah, people who lost their platforms speaking the truth still have not gotten them back. Those who questioned the utility of paper masks and the costs of remote learning were scorned. And in a cautionary tale about the mainstream media's approach to the science, University of Pennsylvania scientist who pioneered mRNA vaccines spent years in scientific wilderness and enduring sneers and abuse from the scientific establishment. She just won the Nobel Prize in Medicine. Good going, I guess. For most people, this isn't a story of journalistic triumph. For Hertzgaard, a journalist and author of Hot, living through the next 50 years on Earth, it's a template. And he now spends his time telling other journalists exactly how to cover global warming. Some might say that's not very journalistic, and nobody seems to be complaining. Well, journalism has been co-opted by political ideology for a long time now. Like the days of journalists not caring about anything but getting to the truth are over. Like nowadays, if the truth actually comes out and it's at odds with the propaganda they're trying to push, that is a fucking problem. Covering climate now presses media organizations to make climate a part of every beat in the newsroom. And meanwhile, was it CNBC? They shut down their climate desk because no one was watching. They know it's propaganda. Go ahead, guys, I guess. Do it. Its partners include top TV market, TV networks and print publications such as ABC and CBS and MSNBC, Time, HuffPo, Vox, and its money comes from the nation's wealthiest liberal foundations, including Rockefeller Family Fund and David and Lucille Packard Foundation. Woo! We know who's, it's no coincidence that these wealthy foundations that have invested trillions of dollars combined into this scam will not let the scam die. The conference that was held in Columbia Journalism School days later, former Columbia Journalism Review editor and publisher Kyle Pope left the publication to join Covering Climate Now full-time. Not a total coincidence, I'm sure. Not before plugging the conference. We are fast approaching a moment where every reporter is going to have to be a climate reporter. Go ahead. You'll all be shut down. Look, nobody needs you guys anymore. The Columbia Journalism School, the release continues, leading the charge and challenging the way our climate is currently covered or not being covered. Again, look at the CNBC climate desk. Today, journalists are activists. They have been for the past few decades, at least, and the conference itself reflected the blurred line between climate journalism and climate activism. Is there even a line there? I think at this point, climate journalists are just a subset of climate activists. Like, not all climate activists are journalists, but all of the climate journalists are activists. There's no line there. It's like a Venn diagram with one circle inside of another. But the rest of the gatherings, roughly 20 panels and speeches, are led by journalists from the nation's more prominent outlets, from Nothing But Crap to CBS to Time. These journalists, such as CBS National Environmental Correspondent Dave Schachter and Time senior correspondent Justin Worland, echoed Hertzgaard's rallying cry, portraying climate change as a do-or-die issue that transcends industry norms and standard practices. Yeah, this is what happens when you get drunk on your own Kool-Aid. They fell hook, line, and sinker for their own propaganda. They legitimately believe the entire world is going to blow up or something. Like, if we don't act now, the world will be underwater by 2020, guys. I swear. Pope and others stressed we need to weave climate coverage into every other story. Yeah, that's done so well for you guys, hasn't it? Like, weaving your political activism into everything. That's really been boosting your numbers, huh? Yeah, perhaps they haven't been reading the New York Lives, which raised the alarm this summer about the impact of climate change on summer camps and linked it to the rise in mental health disorders. Communist News Network warned it may cause a tequila shortage. Okay, now that would be a legit emergency right there. If we were actually facing a tequila shortage, yeah, I'd want to hear about that. I don't even drink tequila that often. On a panel about climate change and the current year plus one elections, oh, of course. Journalists from Time, Telemundo, and CBS work to swat down the notion that media outlets should present facts for viewers to consider as they make up their own minds. Yeah, this is the mainstream media. They are activists. They don't want to just present you with the facts so you can make up your own mind. They will tell you what you are to believe. Instead, former CBS News Vice President Al Ortiz said the press should get over their fears of advocating for one political party or over another. Climate change is too urgent, he suggested, for Republicans to win another election. And that's the real goal right there. They're using climate change as a shield while it's actually been their TDS all along. These guys are fucking insane. And then they wonder why no one trusts them anymore. I think it's unrealistic to think you just approach it from a clinical scientific point of view. Here are the facts. Everyone's going to make up their own minds. The fact is, if you have a Republican Party take over both executive and legislative branches of government, you're going to stop climate change policy in the government for 5 years. And we don't have 5 years. We're not underwater yet. We're way past that, and I think it's important to remind people of that. It's not just something that can be depoliticized. At this point, those rich liberal foundations they brought up, that's their only source of money because no viewers are watching this shit. At other points in the conference, panelists condemned the Republican Party for engaging in climate misinformation and disinformation. Look in the fucking mirror. And let's add fear-mongering to it as well for you. In some cases, the panelists themselves marshaled misinformation to defend the pitfalls of green energy and the other climate-focused solutions. Yeah, they don't see it. They don't even know they're the bad guys. Like, this entire right side of history crowd doesn't even know they're the villains. Times Worland, for example, said it was misinformation to allege that green energy leads to higher prices for American families, but Brandon's energy department has acknowledged that so-called clean electricity is roughly 4.5 times more expensive than natural gas. And offshore wind and other green developments in New Jersey expect to increase energy rates by 10 to 20%. So the truth is misinformation like this. And this is why we have to fight against all these misinformation policies they're trying to force on us, because by their logic, misinformation has nothing to do with the truth. Like a regular person would assume misinformation means lying, basically. But that's not the case with them. They're the ones peddling the lies. And misinformation is anything that goes against the propaganda, anything that goes against their narrative. That's what's misinformation. And the conference also included an interview with former UN climate official Christiana Figueres, who downplayed the amount of minerals required to produce green energy in comparison to oil and gas production. An electric vehicle requires 6 times more minerals than a gas-powered car, and an onshore wind plant requires 9 times more minerals than a gas-fired plant. All of those are pretty hard to get. So when we're talking about like those rare earth metals and minerals, like it's not so much that those are rare. It's that like they generally don't show up in like giant veins. Like, you got those gold veins. It's all concentrated in one spot. But with these rare earth metals, like it's not the case. Like they're plentiful. It's just they're evenly distributed throughout everything. So if you want to get, decent amounts of them, you got to strip mine and destroy like miles and miles and miles of land to get them. Yeah, that's why it's a problem. No, readers shouldn't expect Covering Climate Now's media partners to report those facts. Under the group's blueprint, green energy shortcomings and the policy experts who highlight them are not to be platformed. So guess what? We really do. We need to start treating them the same fucking way. Don't give these fuckers attention. Don't give them platforms. Just be done with them. Let them fade. When they destroy their platforms and are then begging to be let onto yours, just block them. Ignore them. They deserve to fade away. The climate change is too important of an issue, CBS's Schechter said during a conference panel, to leave an audience thinking there are two sides to this story or a subject of meaningful scientific debate. Instead, those who argue in favor of oil and gas should be ignored. Yeah, and these people really aren't going to like it when they're treated the same way. Holy shit, they're going to be furious. Now, Warland, Figueres, and Schechter did not return requests for comment. I mean, that I won't blame them for. I wouldn't talk to the media either. Covering Climate Now lauded the event as a roaring success on all levels, knowing that hundreds of journalists flocked to New York City to attend. Those who didn't can still incorporate the group's practices into their coverage. The Covering Climate Now website includes reporting guidelines complete with story ideas, questions to ask local politicians and companies, and language for journalists to echo in their pieces. God, man, remember when Gamergate was exposing that shit? We're like, oh God, like one day, 22 of you put out the same article. Is something going on here? Remember how that was just a crazy conspiracy theory? One such guide says there's simply no good faith argument against the need for rapid, forceful action to fight climate change, while another contends there's extreme weather story doesn't mention climate change is incomplete and potentially even inaccurate. Yeah, that's why they're shoving it into everything. Every single story they have to shove their climate propaganda into at some point. Judging by the Covering Climate Now's member roster and speaker lineup, most of the mainstream media are on board with the group's climate coverage revolution. Journalists who aren't should take heed from Democracy Now! Founder Amy Goodman, who used the conference to send a message to any detractors. Watch out. We have to make it unacceptable for journalists, even general political journalists, to not ask these questions, she said. Now's the time. You need to pick a fucking side. Do you want to side with the literal Nazis who are definitely going to lose this in the long run? Or are you going to side with the regular people? There's no going back, though, whichever one you pick. None of the people that side with these Nazis are going to be given any sympathy or forgiveness when inevitably this blows up in their face, by the way. So think carefully. Like the fact that this is like they've always done shit like this, but usually they hid it. Like they kept shit like this, like all their collusion in back rooms. The fact that they're doing this out in the open, dude, it's over. Like the whole profession is done. It's like they're giving up. They see YouTubers eating their lunch and they're like, there's no point in even fighting.